Hello, and welcome to Nostalgia Marcana. I'm your host, Doug Leaf. Each episode of this podcast, we'll look back on the movies, TV, games, people, and phenomena that we still love talking about all these years later, and ask ourselves why these bits of pop culture still enchant us today. This week, we'll be revisiting... You just heard the entire opening theme to Batman the Animated Series. Why did I let the entire thing play? Because this is one of those shows that when you turn it on, you do not skip the opening theme. That opening salvo tells you everything you need to know about this cartoon and the world in which it inhabits, this dark, foreboding Twilight world where Batman is really the only defense standing between the people of Gotham and those who would do them harm. I am extremely excited to talk about this cartoon. I think it's one of the best ever produced on any subject, let alone superheroes. And I'm very excited to have a dynamic duo today of our own, not just me, but returning champion, our friend Rich Baker. You can find him at the West Side Comedy Theater. You can also find him at Rich Baker Coaching, where he can teach you how to do the amazing funny things he does. And I know he's a big Batman fan because he suggested this topic, and I couldn't be more excited to have him here. Again, ladies and gentlemen, Rich Baker.
Thanks so much. I love being on this show. I love talking with you. And this, the two subjects we talked about before are great, and this one particularly, like you, huge fan. I think it's one of the best things ever made, ever. I love it.
It really is a triumph on almost every level, and I was thinking about it you have to talk about it in the context in which it came out, like the time it came out.
Yeah.
Because if you weren't young enough or not even born yet, it's hard to describe what a pop culture phenomenon Tim Burton's Batman was in 1989. Yeah. We talked about it a little bit on the Ninja Turtles episode, but yeah, I mean, were you young enough to remember Batmania?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I think it came out, fall of 90 or something like it, whatever it was. It was it hit me. I think I was 9 years old, and I was a fan of Batman comic books, and I'd seen the old 60s show, but the movie was nothing like any of that.
Yeah, the movie derived a lot of its inspiration from the comics of the 80s, which were darker. Batman had gotten very, very campy with Adam West in the 60s and stayed that way kind of through the 70s. And then the response to that from, guys like, I think whoever, Alan Moore, and, these classic comic book writers were to do these very dark takes on Batman, which influenced the very gothic take we got with Tim Burton.
Yeah.
But what I love about this show is, obviously someone said, we got to do a Batman cartoon because Batman is so popular. And this was in the era of fuck it, make it into a cartoon. So what we could have and probably almost should have gotten was a more direct adaptation, a cartoon version of Tim Burton's Batman. And that's not at all what this is.
Yeah. And what we certainly didn't get was a Batman from the Super Friends era kind of thing, which was a lot of 80s cartoons were like, kids, don't, remember to cross the street or, that kind of stuff. This was nothing like that.
Yeah, this has very little of the, there's no camp in it at all.
No.
Virtually no camp in it. But there's not, again, the Bruce Wayne we get here and all of the characters around him are not cartoon versions of the characters from the Tim Burton movie. They went out and they made their own thing. It is dark, and they borrowed the Danny Elfman theme for the theme of the show, but that's about it. The dark world this inhabits is not even the like visually, it's not the world of Tim Burton's Batman either.
Yeah. No, Tim Burton's Batman it's a dark comedy. Really what it is. The Joker is deadly, but he's also silly in many ways. With the ridiculously large gun and going around and like slapping paint on art and different stuff like that. This had none of that. This was like the most noir, dark thing really I'd ever seen at that point.
Well, not just you said noir, like it's 40s noir. This is much more similar to 40s era Batman, like the original conception of Batman, than it is to anything else in that had come before it. It borrows the look of the show. I mean, it's not even clear when it's supposed to take place because all the men are dressed, they're wearing hats like it's the 40s. The look of the buildings is Art Deco. The fonts are Art Deco. Even the title cards to the episodes are a lot like the title cards you would get to movies of the 40s.
Yep.
But there are still like computers and things, so it kind of it makes this feel timeless.
Yeah, and it's really its own world, right? Like it's not some of the technology in this is well beyond even what we have now, let alone what we had in 1992 when it came out or whatever. And then, but yeah, the cars and different things are like, oh, that is old, that's retro. And so, it's out of time and out of space, but still relatable.
Yeah, it's probably my favorite Batman thing. And I like Batman. This is probably my favorite Batman piece of media. And I like the Tim Burton movies. I like the Nolan movies. They all have their place, and they're wonderful for different reasons.
Sure.
But this is like a thesis statement on like, if you were to if aliens came down and you wanted to explain what is Batman, I think this is the most complete thing you could show them to say, this is what Batman is.
100%. And just to go back to the context a little bit, we're talking about like Frank Miller's comics and whatnot. The only reason they were able to get away with this was because of Tiny Toons was such a hit. Like, that was because of Steven Spielberg. And so basically they had kind of carte blanche to spend way more money than they should have. They had orchestral music as opposed to just some kind of like, lesser than, canned music kind of stuff. And because of the success of one cartoon, which was completely different in feel and scope and everything, allowed for this experiment to happen. And it became, as you said, one of the, I agree, best media version of Batman, and it'll be hard to top if it ever is.
Yeah, I almost don't know that you can. We can talk a little bit about the visual style here because we mentioned, yes, the look is very 40s. It's based partly on these old Fleischer cartoons of a Superman that were from that era.
Yeah.
But what's most interesting about it is the animation is done in a different way. Yeah. Because they wanted the show to be so dark, and I think this is the fun fact about it, is that all the backgrounds, they started with black paper and painted onto it. And I heard somewhere that was actually, they started as a budgetary thing of like, we can't just use up this much black paint to make everything black. We'll just start black. But it makes everything look almost charcoal. These very, again, stark backgrounds where almost none of the show takes place in broad daylight. At most, you get dusk. Almost everything is at night.
Yeah, there's like a couple of scenes spread out throughout the whole series that's where the sun is out, and it's always jarring.
Yeah, it is. And I love, again, you said the sound of the show, the look of the show, but I think really the beating heart of the show are the top tier vocal performances.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, part of the reason we're doing this is because of the recent passing of Batman himself, Kevin Conroy.
Yeah, what a hero he was too. Just a phenomenal performer. And of course, you're going to be hearing clips of his work throughout this episode. I'll be dropping those in there. What I love about his voice, and you can kind of hear like why does Christian Bale do that weird scratchy thing with his voice? It's kind of inspired by this, where Kevin Conroy is able to create a very different sound for Bruce Wayne as he does for Batman.
Yep.
Which is darker and gravelier. But what strikes me about his Batman, even when he is intimidating, there's like a warmth there that is hard to put your finger on.
Yeah. And I mean, and it wasn't like he got lucky. They according to what I saw, they listened to over 200 auditions and just couldn't find the Batman they wanted. Couldn't find it. And this guy wasn't even a voice actor. He was a New York theater actor, doing plays and stuff. And they brought him in, and everyone immediately went, "That's it. That's the voice."
Yeah, yeah, and he does this stuff where it's extremely subtle. And it's very, very impressive what he's able to convey with the help of the animators, of course. But that kind of like Batman as protector, like there are times that we'll talk about in the episodes we'll be focusing on today, where you see him like comfort people, where you see him be like hurt, and it's like that's kind of missing in a lot of the live action Batmans we've gotten. Is that like no, he's trying to help people. There's like usually it's like so in the Nolan verse, for example, it's all about how he's, how thankless the job of Batman is, right? That, he'll help people, but they'll never know that he helped them. He'll never get the kudos. And here there's like moments where he gets to like directly help somebody and like tell them, hey, it's going to be okay. I got you.
Yeah.
And that's a thing that's just missing from Batman. And that I think it's sort of, even in this series, when they got into like, a couple of seasons, that those end seasons where they brought in like Tim Drake as Robin, they started to change his character where he becomes a little more of an aloof asshole. And I'm like, no, you're missing the part where he's like devastated that Harvey Dent has been disfigured.
Yeah.
Like you need that, like, Harvey, no,
yeah.
that part of his voice.
Yeah. And one thing that Kevin Conroy said in multiple interviews that I think really helped define Batman the character even more was that he said, "Oh, the resting voice for this character is the Batman voice, and the Bruce Wayne voice is the voice that the character has to modulate a little bit to fit in with society. But like his natural speaking voice, how he talks to Alfred and anyone who knows the secret, it is always the Batman voice."
That's a great point. I think you're right, and that definitely is something that comes up. Like in Batman Begins, they have the character of Rachel literally just say it out loud, like, "No, Bruce Wayne is the mask you wear."
Yeah, and I think that came from this series.
I think you're right. I think the Nolan verse owes a debt to Paul Dini's Batman, which we should name check Paul Dini for sure.
Oh yeah, Paul Dini and Bruce Timm are. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say they're the architects of this thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like a lot of people were involved, and there's a lot of unsung heroes in animation, and you could go down the list, but those two are usually recited as Bruce Timm, Paul Dini. Those are your guys, because this led to so many other projects, animated movies, other animated series, and it was kind of called the Dini-Timm universe or something like that.
Yeah, and I think it's their writing, ultimately, that really makes this incredible. There are moments in this series where, with relatively little dialogue, they're able to really grab you and kind of go like, oh, I thought we were having, some goofy superhero hijinks, and now I got to think about some shit.
Yeah. Yeah, this show is responsible personally for me, and I'm sure you can relate a lot of other people of like, understanding empathy in a way that I'd never really thought about, at least not through media before.
They do that in a very good way. You're right, especially with their villains and the way that they treat them and the way Batman treats them as well. There is a lot of that empathy of like, they in later iterations of the character, they have Batman is like, okay, well, I'm not going to kill anybody, but I'll beat you to a pretty good pulp.
Yeah.
Like technically you're not dead. Yes, you're on a lot of bags and tubes, but you're not dead, so I didn't break my one rule. And here it's like, no, Batman is like, you really get the sense that he has a deft touch, and he really is going to like try and capture these people rather than kill them, even though arguably like, yeah, you should kill the Joker, you should kill, the Scarecrow or whoever, because they're going to do more harm. But he's like, no, he really believes like, if we get these people the mental health they need, maybe they can re-enter society.
Yeah. Despite the evidence.
Despite all evidence to the contrary. Yeah, he believes, like, he's a true believer, and he's a hopeful Batman, which I like.
Yeah.
We should talk about Mark Hamill, too.
Of course. So the original, do you know who was originally supposed to play the Joker?
Tim Curry.
Tim Curry. Like, I assumed it would be some nobody. Like, they canned, a great actor and brought in who I wouldn't previously had considered a great actor, like an okay actor, and then this guy crushes the hell out of it.
Yeah, I think somewhere you can find the Tim Curry audio. I'll see if I can get that.
Hey, Batman, you stink so bad, I can smell you from here. Pew. Pew, pew, pew.
But, I mean, you could sort of hear the idea of Tim Curry as the Joker.
Yeah.
But, yeah, you're right. Mark Hamill, of course, Luke Skywalker, who has had a long voiceover career, but this is by far his best performance. And we'll talk about it again in the context of individual episodes when we get there. But what I love about this Joker, love that Joker. He really modulates this performance, and you kind of get all these different, like, you think about, like, okay, there's like Cesar Romero's Joker and Heath Ledger's Joker and Nicholson's Joker and all these different versions of the character, and Hamill gives you the whole spectrum.
Yeah. And just like they said when they cast him, like, that laugh. And it's not just one laugh. He's got so many different Joker laughs, but every one of them you feel this psychotic person laughing as opposed to, just some laugh.
And not just the laugh, but, like, again, sometimes he is very silly and campy, and they can just, throttle him over to utterly menacing and terrifying so quickly. Do you know where part of that voice came from?
I know where some of it, but I'd love to hear what you have to say.
So I saw him in an interview, and he said he based a lot of the voice on Claude Rains as the Invisible Man, which that's one of my favorite old Universal monster movies.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
a great book. But yeah, you can see it in that performance where there's that scene pretty early on in the movie where he basically unwraps his gauze to be invisible, and he's taunting the townsfolk. He reaches this crazy kind of vocal space, and it's like, oh yeah, that I can hear it. Like, that's the Joker right there.
Heck yeah.
All right, you fools. You've brought it on yourselves. Everything would have come right if you'd only left me alone. You've driven me near madness with your peering through the keyholes and gaping through the curtains. And now you'll suffer for it. You're crazy to know who I am, aren't you? All right, I'll show you. There's a souvenir for you. And one for you. I'll show you who I am and what I am.
Look, he's all eaten away.
How do you like that,
So something that I couldn't find any interview that Mark Hamill said this in, but that I happen to remember. I don't know if you watched prior to this series, there was a live action Flash TV show. I think it was 89 or something like that. The very last episode, Mark Hamill plays the Trickster, a Flash villain, and it's not a great series. It's flawed in many ways, but like I remember rewatching that like 10 or so years ago, and I go, holy crap, that is almost the Joker's voice when he plays the Trickster.
Yeah.
He clearly modified it a little, but like he basically had the Joker already in another DC villain played live action.
Yeah, I've seen clips of that, and you're right. It's like, it's like, it feels like off-brand Joker, but what it actually is, it's like, this is the starting point.
Yeah.
He just took this and modified it a little bit to give us that, that we get from him. Do you have any like strong personal memories of like watching the show as a kid, or?
Oh, so many. Yeah, I mean, it was the one show, because this Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was still on the air, I think, when this came out, but barely. And that was the show that I would never miss. And that and DuckTales. And then, but when this show came out, I thought I had finally like grown up a little. And like all those other shows were good, but they were for kids. And this felt like, oh, this is a show for preteens, teenagers. Like I almost felt like I was watching something I wasn't supposed to be.
Yeah, I had kind of the same reaction to it as a kid. Like seeing this, I would have been 13 when it came out, as it came out in '93, as not too long before Batman Returns came out. In fact, it was so close that the first episode that was created, which is one we'll talk about, Heart of Ice, that was the first episode they produced. But the first episode they actually aired was a Catwoman episode because they wanted to try and build up hype for Michelle Pfeiffer's appearance in the movie. But the ones that stick with me are probably the ones we're going to be talking about because they almost have the structure of a Twilight Zone episode where it starts off, okay, we're Batman, he's doing stuff, he's rescuing people, and then we get hit real hard with like just something bleak and profound.
Yeah.
And I was just like going, oh my God, I can't believe they're going to this emotional space on this show.
And that emotional space is often, not always, but often in the hands of the villains rather than Batman.
Most of the time. You're right. It's, again, you talked about that empathy before, and this is where they build that, which is like these people are suffering on some level. It's the old, hurt people thing. But up until this point, most of the Batman villains that most people, I mean, if you're not reading the comics, most people would think of would be the folks from the 60s series who are live action cartoons more than these people are.
Yeah.
And they found a way, I think, to introduce, they took some of these like third tier villains and make them feel like, full-fledged members of the Rogues Gallery with an incredible amount of pathos. Like, we're not doing any Mad Hatter episodes today, but like, holy shit, they made me care about the Mad Hatter, a guy who dresses like the Mad Hatter from Alice in Wonderland illustrations and uses mind control hats on people. It should be silly, but it's not. It's actually like extremely depressing.
Same with Clayface. Like he's just he's a blob of clay, but like you feel so bad for Matt Hagen, this guy who turns into this. He's this actor and whatnot. Again, we're not talking about that, but like we could almost every villain, with maybe the exception of the Joker himself. Like there's something about him that we like. Oh, I get it. I don't agree with how you're doing this, but I get how you got from person to villain.
Absolutely. Yeah, they make all of their villains have such kind of like a tragedy to them, and that makes it all work. And it's like, okay, like I said, you don't want Batman to kill him. You want them to be like cured of whatever is broken inside of them.
Yeah.
And so it made it when like those characters showed up in other works, like for example, we're not going to focus on this, but like the Batman Arkham series of video games was also kind of done by Paul Dini. It has a lot of the same voice actors, but when they would throw all of these villains into these video games, they were trusting their audience to just go, oh, I recognize that villain. And why do you recognize that name as a household name? Because you watched this show.
Absolutely. And I think anyone who's into Batman, at least anywhere near our age, saw this show. And I, like you, I encourage anyone to go back and like, they're timeless. You can go watch them, and you can watch a lot of them on YouTube.
And then they're also on HBO Max. I believe they have the whole run of the show.
Yep.
So highly recommend that. I would also recommend another podcast called What a Cartoon, which is an excellent podcast about all things animation. And they did a number of series deep diving on individual Batman episodes in far more detail than we're going to get to here. So I just want to plug that. It's a great show with a couple of great hosts. But this is probably a good chance to start talking about the individual episodes because we got a lot to cover, and they're all bangers. So you want to start with Heart of Ice?
Absolutely. Yeah. According to what I found, this was the 14th episode. Came out somewhere in like September of '92 or something like that. And this took a villain who was just known as Mr. Freeze, a guy with a freeze gun. There was nothing more to him, and it showed us how he became Mr. Freeze, and the voice actor who did it gave him so much humanity, like so many of these voice actors we're going to talk about, that this character went from no one even knew who he was unless you were a huge comic book fan to he's one of the baddest of the bad, and he's like this guy that he became obviously enough for the movie, and Arnold Schwarzenegger who made choices. But this episode, like it might be as good as every one of these episodes are. This might be like the best of them all, but I mean, any of these could be.
Yeah, it's really good. It actually was nominated for an Emmy. It was that good. And you're right. Like, what's interesting is not only does the voice actor who plays Mr. Freeze do a good job of, again, kind of conveying his tragic backstory, which we'll get into, but he's doing it with this vocal filter because the character is through a scientific mishap cannot survive outside of a sub-zero environment, so he has to wear this suit to keep him cold. So from inside that suit, there's like this, it's not Darth Vader, but there's like a modulator on his voice. And he speaks with a fairly flat affect because his emotions are, of course, frozen too. And yet, like, you feel like just that incredible anger that he has, this resentment at being screwed over by, of all people, Mark Hamill.
So Michael Ansara, who plays the voice of Mr. Freeze, who's in Star Trek and Buck Rogers and that kind of thing. So apparently Bruce Timm wanted him to sound like a robot, wanted him to be like, I am Mr. Freeze. And Michael Ansara pushed back and said, no, that would strip him of all humanity. And so he played him almost robotic, but still with enough humanity to where you really feel for him.
Yeah, and it's a great backstory they came up with. His wife had a terminal illness. He is this cryogenic scientist, so he has her frozen while he tries to work out a cure, but he's doing it on the company's dime with their equipment without their permission. So the asshole who runs the company, who is played by Mark Hamill, comes in, disrupts the experiment, and basically throws him against the beakers and stuff, releasing chemicals, which turns him into Mr. Freeze, which Batman learns along the way through some footage.
My name is Dr. Victor Freeze. I am recording what I pray will be mankind's first step toward immortality. Behind me you see the CC-100, a cryogenic freezing chamber of my own design. I created it for the express purpose of freezing subjects stricken with inoperable ailments. Subjects like my own beloved wife, Nora. Once a remedy has been found...
Open this door! Open it now! Get away from that equipment! Shut this stuff down.
Stop! This is my experiment!
Your unauthorized experiment. I ordered funding suspended weeks ago. I'm already $3 million in debt thanks to you.
You can't stop it now. My wife is in there.
So bring her out.
You can't interrupt the process now!
Open it.
It's her only chance!
This is my equipment. Mine. I have every legal right to use it or not use it as I see fit. I say this project ends now!
No! Stay away from her! Murderer!
Victor, I'm sorry. I lost my temper. It doesn't have to come to this. We can talk.
Oh! Oh!
Get out! Get out!
Nora! Nora! My God.
And of course, what Mr. Freeze is trying to do is, one, get his revenge on the corporation, but also obtain the tools he will need to hopefully continue saving his wife.
Yeah. And like other episodes we'll talk about, the real bad guy is the CEO. His name's Boyle. He's the Goth Corp CEO. And it's like, he's the one who kind of, his greed or whatever helps cause Mr. Freeze. And even though he's not in the rogues gallery, you could argue that he's the real villain of this episode.
They do that a lot.
Yeah.
There's a number of kind of very human level villains. I mean, they have all their, colorful comic booky super villains, but there are a number of villains in this show. Him, Roland Daggett, who is
Yes.
a corporate asshole. You've got a couple of crime bosses in there. These kinds of villains who are kind of, there's more like the banality of evil. And, they are the ones who, like, they really get away with everything. And I love that. It's a great feeling of like, okay, we caught the Penguin or whoever this time. We sent him off to Arkham, but this guy appears untouchable.
Yeah. One thing I'll throw out, the writing of this episode is, especially in only 20 minutes or 22 minutes, however long these are. I mean, they're so short. Batman has a cold in it. Of course he does. He's fighting a cold guy and he has a cold. Like, what a great, and then Alfred gives him chicken soup. And of all the bat gadgets he has, the one that, and he gets stripped of his belt, but the one thing he still has on him is that chicken soup, which allows him to defeat Mr. Freeze because of this thing that seemed like a throwaway bit, but it's actually integral to the plot.
Yeah, they're very well like plotted, self-contained little episodes. They do a great job of like the setup and the delivery of all these concepts. But my favorite thing in the episode is that for the first half of it, it feels almost like a 60s, Adam West Batman episode. It's a little more campy. You've got the Mr. Freeze's look. It is kind of intimidating, but also the suit he's wearing is very much out of like, a 50s monster movie.
Yes.
It's almost silly looking. He's got this, very comic booky cold laser. And so it's hard to take seriously. And then the turn they take where it's like, all right, now we're going to show you his backstory. And it's like, oh, wow, I thought I was watching something else.
Yes.
And then, of course, after he's captured, the monologue he delivers to this, he's got this little, like, I don't know if it's a music box or whatever it is. He's got this little statuette of his wife in ice in a little enclosed thing. This monologue he delivers to it is so painful, and it's so good.
Yeah.
I failed you. I wish there were another way for me to say it. I cannot. I can only beg your forgiveness and pray you'll hear me somehow. Someplace where a warm hand waits for mine.
Yeah, it's, again, great casting, great writing, just mixes for everything. Just one of several that we'll talk about, characters, so they didn't create Mr. Freeze for this, but they did create a backstory that would become canon in every other thing Batman. But because of that, his wife, Nora Freeze, she wasn't even a character that existed, and she's, since become a major character in the DC universe, because of this episode. Yeah, Heart of Ice, I don't think anyone could argue is just a masterpiece of, they call these episodes short films. That's how they, wanted to write them. Is like, I want to make a little short movie, and I'd put this up against any other short film.
Absolutely. Again, it's that like the efficiency with which they get all this stuff across is really impressive. And it's especially when you have characters like Mr. Freeze and Batman who don't actually talk a whole lot. They tend to be kind of quieter characters. They do so much, like with every word that they choose. It's really impressive. I thought maybe now we'll go to Joker's favor to spotlight a great villain. This is, if you want to kind of give the synopsis of this, it's really fun.
It's so fun. It starts out with a guy who we don't know at all, Charlie, and he's just like a run of the, working guy, and he's complaining about his life, like, oh, my wife's probably making meatloaf, my boss yelled at me, whatever, and someone cuts him off, and he starts yelling at him. Turns out the guy he's yelling at is the Joker, and so, of course, the Joker corners him, and is like, okay, I'll spare you, but you're going to owe me a favor, and I don't know when I'm going to call it in. And so Charlie like runs and he changes his name and moves his family, but the Joker has, kept tabs on him, and finally he comes to collect that favor. And, so all he needs Charlie to do is open a door, so he says. But then, of course, it's a heist to try and kill Commissioner Gordon and all these other police officers and the mayor and all that other stuff. And so that he's, Charlie's he's the center of this conspiracy, so he's got to be the one to figure out how to get Batman involved and kind of save the day.
Yeah, it's a really great opener. It's one of my favorite opening things in the whole show because, one, you're right. It's like as soon as we're focused on this guy that is a non-character, like we don't know anything about Charlie, so instantly you're kind of going, all right, where's this going? Where's this going? And you see this freeway chase happen. We see cop cars are zooming down and the Batmobile flies past, and he's like, oh my God. And then so he gets into that, like you said, that road rage incident. And we've all kind of imagined that nightmare where some other driver is angry at us. And it's not just anybody. It's like, the gangbanger or, it's John Gotti or, whoever it is, Tony Soprano.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, it's not just that I got in a road rage incident. It's with the worst human in the world. And here, you don't get much worse than the Joker. And when I was talking about before that, like, modulated performance, because in this instance where the Joker pulls him over, he is fucking terrifying.
Oh, yeah.
There's your 2 cents. Now, what are you going to do to me?
Listen, I'm sorry, really. I had a bad day. Boss turned down my raise.
Now look, my rude friend. We can't have people cursing at each other on the freeway. It's simply not polite. I'm just going to have to teach you some manners.
Please don't. I have a family, a wife, a little boy. Please, I'll do anything to make it up. Anything.
Anything, says you? Uh-huh. Okie dokie. Wallet.
Oh, sure. I don't have much cash.
No, please, don't insult me. Charles Michael Collins. That's you. Lousy picture, though. Lousy. Address, height, weight, blah, blah, blah. Righty. Oh, chuckers. Here's the deal. I'll let you off if you promise to do a little favor for me.
Oh, okay. What?
I don't know. I haven't thought of it yet. You just toddle on back to your mundane, meaningless little life, and when I need you, I'll call. Fair? Good? Great! I'll be in touch.
Yeah, and he's there, and he knows it, right? And like the character is intentionally like intimidating this guy to get the laughs out of it. But there's so much nuance in Mark Hamill's performance and how he talks to Charlie, and he'll go from pleasant to it's good to see you, Charlie, old chap, to just like psycho, like I haven't figured it out yet, kind of stuff.
Yeah, I love all of that, because it kind of reminds me a little bit of Joe Pesci in Goodfellas. Because what makes that character scary is that, like, he can turn on a dime, and it's like, it's that thing of like, oh, you think I'm funny? How am I funny? And you all know, like, oh no, one of the wires in his head got crossed. He's on, he's fixated on something, and we're all fucking in for it now. But the Joker here but Joe Pesci is more out of control, mentally ill. Mark Hamill's Joker is never actually out of control. He reminds me more of like Heath Ledger, his performance in that way, where it's just like anytime he seems to be doing something crazy and, I'm an agent of chaos, right? Like, no, you're fucking not, right? That's a lie. No, it's all a performance.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I love in the Heath Ledger, and he's like, everyone's a schemer. I don't have a plan. It's like, you have a plan more bigger than anyone's plan.
Right. Your plan is on top of another plan. His brilliance in that movie is that he's got so many plans that the reason it seems like he can't lose is he's already figured out, if this doesn't go my way, here's what I'll do next. Right. So he's always got a plan. Here, when you find out, he's like, I just need you to open a door. We all know that's a lie, but it sounds so.
Of course.
But it could also be very jokery of like, yep, I intimidated you. I scared you into changing your identity. But really, I just need you to do this one dumb thing because I can, and it entertains me.
Yeah.
So you could interpret it either way.
Absolutely. And speaking of great voice actors, Ed Begley Jr. Plays Charlie, and I knew who Ed Begley Jr. was back then, but Charlie's this big fat guy, balding guy, and Ed Begley Jr. is this beanpole tall guy, and I just love that he, like, the way he plays it. I didn't even know it was him, and he plays it such a great, because the character has an arc of, at the beginning he's complaining about his life, he gets the road rage, and all this happens, and at the end he's the one to top the Joker, not the Batman, by making the Joker think that he got a bomb to go off, and it turns out to just have confetti. And so he kind of beats the Joker at his own game.
Yeah, and it's one of these episodes where it has actually a fairly low Batman quotient. He only kind of comes in at the end to a degree. He's not very much involved, except Charlie is trying to find a way to signal Batman to hopefully defeat the Joker. Which he does, but again, he confronts the Joker and he delivers that, like crazed, like, oh, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna blow us all up, and the Joker's like, oh crap, I drove him nuts and he's gonna do it. It's great. he out Jokers the Joker.
Yeah, and aside from the plot, a huge thing about Joker's favor that we got to talk about is it was the first appearance of Harley Quinn.
Is it okay?
And when Harley Quinn was put in there, she was just put in there as a goon, just Joker's, like, she wasn't like a character that had a backstory. She was just one of Joker's goons. I thought, oh, he needs a female in this because she's going to bring the cake and that kind of thing. And so Arlene Sorkin, who plays Harley Quinn, she didn't put as much into the voice. She kind of voiced her herself because they told her it was a one-off character. And, when they want to bring her back, that's when she started putting in the more New York cab driver kind of accent and the different little nuances that Harley Quinn would become famous for.
Yeah, and Paul Dini had known her. They were personal friends. And he had watched her. She had a run on Days of Our Lives. And there was a sequence, like a dream sequence on an episode of Days of Our Lives where she plays a clown. Like, she's dressed up in this two-tone clown outfit and sort of doing a voice that's not all that far off of Harley Quinn's voice. And so that was one of the reasons he brought her in for that. It was like, oh yeah, okay, I've seen you be this kind of, gee whiz, Mr. J, clown before. And
my puddin'.
Puddin'.
I'm on at the roll, let's get it. Okay, 2 drummer boys going to a bar. Ba-dum-ba-dum-bum. Boy, you're a rough crowd.
And yeah, that again, they added a character to Batman canon within this show. Very impressive. There's not
who has become one of the most popular Batman characters now. That has their own movie. It's several different things on own cartoon series.
Right, and now they're adding her into even the Joaquin Phoenix version of the Joker is going to get a Harley Quinn, which is crazy to me that they're going to do that. Where do you want to go next? I've got a few down here. You want to pick one?
Beware the Gray Ghost.
Sure. Oh, man. This is a great episode because of its meta nature. If you want to kind of give the synopsis of this one.
Yeah, so young Bruce Wayne was a fan of a TV show called The Gray Ghost, which was kind of like The Shadow, or kind of like an early Batman or, one of those Green Hornet kind of things. And it's voiced by none other than Adam West. So meta, who, was the most famous Batman prior to this from the 60s TV show. And then what happens? A series of crimes that is based on an old Gray Ghost episode. So Batman's got to find the actor who played the Gray Ghost and get him to help him in the case. But he's also, like, he needs his help, but he also really just wants to work with his childhood hero. And what is amazing in this episode, there's a lot of amazing stuff, but at the very end, without directly saying it, he lets the Gray Ghost know who he is, that he's Bruce Wayne. And that doesn't happen, ever. He's got a few people who know his secret identity, and he's like, trusts this guy so much that he kind of says something and they go, oh, really? And there's that moment in the very end, and I'm like, oh, it's so good.
There you go, Bruce.
Thanks, Mr. Trent.
As a kid, I used to watch it with my father. The Gray Ghost was my hero.
Really? And he still is.
Yeah, the other thing about it is not just that he's working with the actor who played the Grey Ghost, who of course has no actual superhero skills. He doesn't know all the martial arts.
Sure.
The Batman, he truly is just an actor, but he's an out of work actor, right? He can barely pay rent by selling off his old Grey Ghost crap that nobody wants to buy. And I heard, in my research that Adam West was really reluctant to do this because of how it reflected on him, of him feeling like, geez, you're asking me to play this has-been, and I am a has-been. At least at that point in his career, he was really struggling. He talks about he can't get an acting gig because everyone just sees him as the Grey Ghost, which everyone saw Adam West as Batman. Like all of that stuff made Adam West not want to do it. And the showrunners had to kind of like coax him through it and say like, no, see how the episode turns out in the end. It's like, it's worth it because of where the episode ultimately goes. And it says a lot about fandom, right? Toxic fandom, because the guy who is buying all of this Grey Ghost merch from him is the bomber carrying out all of the bombings. The look of the Grey Ghost is cool. He's based on the Spirit, comic book character created by Will. Was his name Will Eisner? No, his name is Eisner.
Will Eisner, yeah.
Yeah, kind of a precursor to Batman as well. So there's all of these like touches in there about how we view our heroes and what happens to them, when people forget about them. And you're right, that like emotional moment at the end where, there's the recognition of, what Grey Ghost did is inspire Bruce Wayne to actually help real people in the real world. Not just, I liked your show, but like I'm out there saving people because of what you did for me.
Yeah. Art, actually does, make a difference in the real world. And, they show this on a meta level of how the art within the art, affected the real world of the art.
Yeah. And Batman even says, right, look at, we've seen the Bat computer and the Batcave in this show a million times. And this is the first time they tell you like, oh, it's based on, the Grey Ghost's setup, right? He's like, and he's showing him around the Batcave, like, look at this. He's like geeking out kind of about, let me show you this thing and that thing. And he's got a spirit costume that he keeps in the Batcave just for, inspiration, all of that stuff. It's so meta and it's so sweet.
Absolutely. Great episode.
Yeah. And of course, Adam West went on to have a pretty solid voice acting career after that. So.
Yeah.
Good for him.
Especially, Family Guy alone.
Mm-hmm. Right. So let's talk about if you're so smart, why aren't you rich? Which
the Riddler's origin story.
Yeah, I picked this one. I just like the Riddler, and I have to tell this story that I switched jobs. It was about 2012. I switched jobs, but I happened to have my last day at the former job land on Halloween. So I went to work that day in costume the same way everyone else did. But I was dressed as the Riddler, specifically this version of the Riddler, the animated series Riddler. So it was fun to like walk around and shake people's hands on my last day of work. I'm like, hey, pleasure working with you. Hope to see you again sometime. Really, not burn any bridges or whatever. But it was very weird to do all that dressed as the Riddler. But I also like it because we've got a lot of Robin here. We haven't talked about this version of Robin, but.
Robin was very inconsistent over the show. Like some episodes he was in, and some episodes we never heard anything about him. So it was kind of hit or miss on any given day when you saw this whether Robin was going to be a part of it.
And the in-universe justification for that is Robin is college age, so he's not always available to be helping Batman. And I think that's good because there's episodes where you go like, man, he's really in a pickle. He should probably call Robin in for some backup right about now. But I like the way because of that, you get a fairly adult Robin here.
Yeah.
And he's not like, gee whiz, holy whatever Batman. He feels like he's an equal to Bruce in a lot of ways. Like he's up to the task. And I like having Robin be kind of on equal footing with Batman.
Yeah. So, this story, again, the corporate CEO is the actual bad guy here because, Edward Nygma, who would eventually become the Riddler, is super smart, and he designs this game that makes his company a lot of money, and the owner makes sure to screw him out of any royalties he can and humiliate him as much as possible, which leads him to want revenge and take on this persona as the Riddler.
And what he does is he takes this like amusement park that's based on his own game that has been under construction. He kidnaps the CEO and forces him into the labyrinth, which is the game. Batman and Robin have to solve the labyrinth, which they do in part by cheating, by like hacking the system. First they solve some of the riddles, and then they're like, you know what, fuck this. We're not going to play by your rules. You're cheating. But what I love about it, there's not a whole lot to say about kind of the middle of the episode, but the way it ends, I think, is really great. Number one, the Riddler has actually outsmarted them, because when you think they're going to capture him, he's like, no, I'm already on a plane. I'm nowhere near this labyrinth. I'm gone. You won't find me, which is great. He reappears not very often. They don't do a lot of Riddler episodes, but I really like that aspect of it. Like, well, of course he's supposed to be smart. He would not stick around to get his ass whipped by Batman. But then what I love is the CEO he's safe, but he'll never sleep again.
You're through, Nygma.
Sorry, boys, but you'll never find me. I'm not even in the amusement park. And by the time you get out of the maze, I'll be out of the city.
I guess the mayor's happy about this.
Bringing in $5.5 million a year in new jobs will do that.
But that creep Mockridge got to pocket a cool 10 mil from the buyout. What a burn.
Maybe. But we've been searching for the Riddler for months. And he's still out there. Mockridge may have his money, but he won't be sleeping well. How much is a good night's sleep worth? Now there's a riddle for you.
Yeah. How much is a good night's sleep worth? And it ends with him like looking under the bed. He's got a shotgun. He's looking all around his rich apartment or whatever. And, so it's like he kind of did get his comeuppance.
Yeah, it's like this weird episode with the Riddler. You don't expect it to have that like horror movie kind of ending of like, oh, like again, going to like, we're going to go deep into like dark mental illness type territory of like this guy, it doesn't matter how much money you have, you will never sleep again. You will never know a moment's peace in your life. And he's, kind of ruined. I really, really liked that. I thought it was such a cool way to like put something darker into an otherwise fairly kind of light and fluffy episode.
Yeah. And again, voice acting, the Riddler, John Glover, who, made up from Gremlins 2, but he would later play Lionel Luthor, Lex Luthor's dad in Smallville. Great actor, brilliant actor, and plays him, he's clearly an unhinged guy, but he plays him very calm and almost astute, in a way that, in the previous version of the Riddler, again, was cartoonish and over the top, and this guy was very calm and, similar to like the Clock King and the Penguin and a few other rogues villains, where he's almost like high society kind of person.
I like that too, because again, in none of the other, we've had a few other versions of the Riddler now in live action. You've got Frank Gorshin from the 60s show. You've got Jim Carrey in Batman Forever, and you got Paul Dano recently in The Batman. And all of them are unhinged in some way. Yeah. And here, Nygma is not. This is more fitting, I think, of the Riddler's character, which is like the kind of person who will sedately come up with these extremely difficult puzzles is not a cackling madman. He's calculating, and that's what we get here.
Hell yeah.
Love it. You want to do Baby Doll.
Sure. This, of all the ones that you gave, this one kind of felt like the black sheep of the list, just because, I mean, it's a good episode, but I was like, it was the only one of the list that I didn't have vivid memories of already before I rewatched it. But it's a really good episode. It's another actor. There's, Clayface, we didn't talk to, as an actor. There's so many actors in this, and I guess it's meta that way. But, she's got this systemic hypoplasia. Took me a second to say that, to where she always looks like a little kid. And she was a little kid star, even though she was like 30 or something. And now she's an adult, but still looks like a little kid. So she wants that back that she had, that stardom, that feeling of family. And so she goes psycho and kidnaps her old TV family.
Yeah, this kind of plays into a thing that was definitely a comedic punching bag in the early 90s, which is like child star gone bad, right? Like Todd Bridges of the world. And I picked this one because she's not a mainline villain. I think she had one other appearance on the show much later. I don't know that she's had any life in the comics or anywhere outside of this, but this one had, I thought, one of the biggest emotional gut punches they've ever thrown, which is that she has this catchphrase from her old TV show, which is sort of like Brady Bunch-esque. Right. She's the baby and she's always getting into trouble. And her catchphrase is, I didn't mean to. And she talks in this very baby-esque voice. And even though, again, she's like, 23 or something when this show is on, she gives up her life on the show because she wants to be a dramatic actress and face plants and is desperate. And they show like a clip of her trying to do Macbeth. And it's a brilliant performance as Lady Macbeth vocally. But you look at her, and of course, she looks like a 6-year-old Cupid doll. And so it doesn't work. But the actress who plays her, she drops the baby shtick and talks in her actual voice. And it's, really compelling. And we find out that she quit the show in a fit of rage because they brought in, another younger kid actor to, like, give her a hard time on the show. And he's played by, the voice actor is the actor who played Cousin Oliver on the Brady Bunch, who was literally, this annoying character that they brought in a late season of a show that everyone hated. Of course, and she is kidnapping her old co-stars to, like, recreate this episode and give it the ending she thinks it deserves, which is, of course, to blow them all up. And it turns out, of course, that the actor who is playing Cousin Oliver or whatever is actually Robin in disguise. They intercepted that actor and made sure that Robin got kidnapped instead. That leads them to them, which leads to this shootout where and a chase of Baby Doll into a house of mirrors where she sees herself, in one of these mirrors. It's not realistic, but one of these mirrors, she looks like she would if she were a full-grown adult. And she looks at it and she says, that's me. That's the real me. And she delivers this just heartbreaking moment.
Look, that's me in there, the real me. There I am. But it's not really real, is it? Just made up and pretend like my family and my life and everything else. Why couldn't you just let me make believe?
And she's holding this gun. She's got nothing left, right? She fires the gun and breaks all the mirrors, including that one, till she's out of bullets and just clicking, just with this 1,000-yard stare. And Batman puts his arm around her again, like that, like comforting moment, and she just says her catchphrase, "I didn't mean to." And now the context is not, gee whiz, I didn't mean to, but it's like, I'm a broken person. And it's
and she doesn't deliver it like a baby. She delivers it like a 50-year-old woman.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking. It's just an incredible moment. But again, I love that like they give Batman the moment, like she just hugs his leg. Like he's like, I could just punch you and take you out, but he does. He recognizes of like what pain she's in, and he comforts this person who's been trying to kill her co-stars. Like it's a great moment.
Yeah, and I'm very curious if I ever get a chance to talk to Bruce Timm in real life. I would be very curious if this episode was at least partly inspired by The Fisher King. If you remember that movie with Robin Williams, but the Jeff Daniels character, he says, "Forgive me." That's his line that he auditions for the sitcom, right? And it becomes integral in the plot. Forgive me, right? And I'm wondering, this episode, rewatching it, really reminded me of that movie. I'm like, I bet this was inspired by that.
Yeah, it's very, very brilliant the way they kind of reuse, because that line gets reused over and over again, and then to kind of rehear it in this context, it's just like I said, like one of my favorite, like just emotionally devastating things that this show delivers. It's very impressive.
That was a hard punch.
Yeah. You want to do Almost Got Him?
Oh, sure. Almost got him. It's almost Rashomon, but not quite. But it's like several short stories within the episode. So, it starts out a poker game. You got the Joker, Penguin, Croc, and Two-Face playing cards. Poison Ivy shows up, and they share their almost got Batman stories.
Yeah, it's great. It's like you get this like anthology series within what's already like a 22-minute cartoon. But it's really fun. Like it's this great. It gives the villains a sense of kind of camaraderie, which sometimes they team up, here and there, but usually not. Usually each episode is kind of a standalone thing. But it's very funny to see like their very lived-in relationships with each other. Like they call out the fact that Poison Ivy used to date Harvey Dent before he was disfigured and turned into Two-Face. The Joker needles Harvey a whole bunch in different ways. And then they get this great line from Croc where like it's finally time for him to tell the story. He's just like, one time I almost hit him with a rock. And that's it. It's so funny.
And then?
I would have got him. Gee, that's too bad, Harv. But I guess you'll always come in second. Anyone else want to go?
Me! There I was, holed up in this quarry. When Batman came nosing around, he was getting closer.
And?
I threw a rock at him.
So, Harvey, what became of the giant penny?
It was a big rock.
It was a big rock.
Yeah, it's very, very funny. And we finally get to the Joker's story, which is that he kidnaps Batman and puts him on he hijacks a talk show, Shades of Joaquin Phoenix again. Interestingly, I don't know if they were inspired by this at all, but
had to have been, right?
Yeah, it seems like it. And he's hooked up to a machine where laughter makes the machine electrocute Batman the more people are laughing. But what I love is like he's not funny. Like the Joker is kind of unintentionally funny. He's never like delivering hilarious jokes as a comedian. So he just gives them all laughing gas to force them to laugh.
And again, Arlene Sorkin kills it as Harley Quinn, because at one point they say that the audience is so gassed up they can read the phone book, and she's like, A. Aronson, 555, and they start laughing or whatever. And I'm like, that delivery of just reading the phone book in Harley's voice, like, amazing.
It's fantastic. And of course he gets out of it. But what I love is, so the twist is that Croc is not Croc. It's Batman in disguise sitting at the poker table. And all of these dudes like way in the background that you have been paying attention to are cops, right? The whole thing is a sting. But they kind of seed throughout the episode. There's little hints that like that's what Batman is up to. And if you're paying attention, you'll note like the dumb story about one time I almost hit him with a rock. But I think at one point early in the episode, Croc gets up from the table. And if you're watching carefully in the background, you can tell that like something has happened. That like maybe the real Croc was like knocked out, but like there's something going on in the shadows that's like odd. you can notice that. There's a few little things here and there. But again, yeah, really fun for that Rashomon element.
Yeah. And of course, it ends with the titular line with Catwoman is trying to, kiss Batman, and he goes away, and she's almost got him.
Yeah, the Joker talks about there's a couple of different ways to quote unquote get Batman other than killing him, and one of them is to kill Catwoman, which they know will hurt him. But that's almost got him. A great episode among these. We've got a few left here I want to get to. So we've got Appointment in Crime Alley and I Am the Night, which are kind of a pair because they both
very similar.
Yeah, they both involve Batman going to visit the site of his parents' murder on the anniversary of the crime.
Yeah. Appointment in Crime Alley is very interesting to me because the only real cartoonish villain is a guy named Nitro, who's like a throwaway villain. And unlike the Riddler or any of the others we talk about, we don't get a backstory. It doesn't matter. The story's not about him. He's just, we need someone to be the guy to literally set the explosives because they're trying to, the real bad guy is trying to blow up Crime Alley so that he can have a real estate deal go through.
Yeah, the whole point is that they are going to just demolish part of this neighborhood, this blighted area, and rebuild it, regardless of the fact that there are still human beings that are living there. And we meet Leslie Tompkins, who is an interesting character. She's, as you said, one of those very few people who knows the secret about Bruce Wayne. Because she was like a counselor who comforted him right after his parents were shot. And so he always goes with her to drop a couple of roses off at Crime Alley. Another kind of fun detail about this is that one of the goons, lesser goons here, is played by Jeffrey Tambor.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I was listening to it and I'm like, boy, that voice sounds familiar. And we've been doing a rewatch of Arrested Development recently. So it's kind of like, I've been hearing a lot of Tambor. So I'm like, oh, that's definitely Jeffrey Tambor. Small role. But I do like that they kind of bring in, again, like kind of a non-comic booky villain in the form of real estate development and gentrification and kind of all of these kind of very real world things that happen in crime infested areas. Yeah,
the greedy rich guy once again is the bad guy.
Yeah, and also that Batman is talking about the quote unquote appointment, right? Like he's worried he's going to be late for this appointment, and we finally realize what it is, which is this remembrance.
Yeah, putting two flowers on the space where his parents were murdered.
Yeah.
This used to be a beautiful street. Good people lived here once.
Good people still live in Crime Alley.
And then in the next one, I Am the Night, which also I guess must take place at least a year later because it's the same thing. He's going to leave the flowers there, and he this is one where he starts to question the value of his crusade as Batman. Am I doing any good? And I really like this because they don't delve into this too much, and they it's rare for them to kind of get this far into Bruce's personal pain and anguish over this.
Yeah.
And it takes kind of a lot of help from those around him to kind of give him the pep talk he needs to go no, you are, think of all the people you've helped over the years, all the crimes you stopped, because he feels like he's on a treadmill to some degree.
Yeah, and they really show Batman suffering from depression. This character that we think of that can do anything, solve any crime, beat any bad guy, but he's suffering from internal depression right now. And I don't know what effect that had on me as a kid, but rewatching as an adult, I'm like, man, we should show that more people who are very powerful can still suffer from this internal kind of struggle.
Bruce? Bruce, if you stay down here much longer, you'll be growing mushrooms in your armpits.
I should have been there.
You can't be everywhere.
I let him down.
You're being too hard on yourself.
He's a friend. More than a friend. Jim Gordon's the same age my father would have been if he hadn't. Now he's hanging by a thread. If I'd gotten there 5 minutes sooner.
You're only human. You do all one man can do. More than any man's expected to do.
I chose this life. I used the night. I became the Knight. Sooner or later, I'll go down. It might be the Joker, or Two-Face, or just some punk who gets lucky. My decision. No regrets. But I can't let anyone else pay for my mistakes.
Jim Gordon's a cop, Bruce. He knows the risks.
How long before I let someone else I care about down? Leslie, Alfred, you. When all is said and done, how much good have I accomplished? They sell t-shirts of me. I've become a cliche. More good for the tourist trade than the streets.
This city would fall apart without you.
Maybe. Maybe not. When you look too long into the abyss looks back through you. Maybe it's time for Batman to return to the night that spawned him, before anyone else gets hurt.
And it gets to that thing that, like, it's a nice realistic thing when you think about, like, yeah, if you keep catching the Joker and he keeps getting out, you know, at a certain point, do you feel like, you know, what's the point? You know, if he's just going to bust out of Arkham again, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, he has, by that same token, he's also foiled the Joker over and over again to stop whatever, you know, he or, you know, any of these other villains was up to. You know, again, just sort of a nice companion piece, and he helps out this young guy, kind of who we meet at the beginning of the episode, kind of turn his life around, and decide to go walk the straight and narrow. And it's like it's that thing of like, you watch the look on Batman's face, and that vocal performance again from Conroy of like, he's like at peace because he's like, I helped someone. I can see, I have that concrete proof that I helped someone have a better life.
And I love the line the kid says right before the end where he says, you probably hear this all the time, but you really changed my life. And you're like, no, Batman doesn't hear that all the time. Batman is gone by the time anyone's saying that.
Right. Yeah. Let's talk about the trial. I think it's just called Trial.
So good.
Yeah. Because this is a, you know, everyone's in this episode. It's so fun because Batman is captured and put on trial in a kangaroo court with the Joker as judge and all the other rogues gallery as the jury.
Yeah, and witnesses.
Yeah. Right, and witnesses. I mean, it's a kangaroo court for sure. But they have this prosecutor who, you know, is, you know, she views Batman as this vigilante who should not be, and is also kidnapped and forced to be his defense attorney. And through the course of her defense, the accusation from the villains is, you know, you made all of us, right? And this thing has come up before, you know, literally in Tim Burton's Batman, like I made you, you made me. You know, should we really be arguing over who made who? You know, right? That concept comes up in Batman Begins and Dark Knight, right? Like you escalate things, you're creating these people. And this episode kind of pushes back on that, and it's like, no, we're going to prove that, like, no, he didn't. Batman did not create these people, with the exception of maybe the Joker, who he knocked into a vat of chemicals. But everyone else, it's like the attorney kind of takes them apart. It's like, no, you didn't. Batman didn't do that to you. You did that to you.
Yeah. And, you know, it goes back to this empathy thing we're talking about of, like, her whole thing as district attorney is, I want to focus on taking down Batman. And now she's got to defend him, and she really comes around and changes her mind and is like, no, we need Batman.
And also, like, she was the person who was arguing, too, that, like, Batman's responsible for creating all of these miscreants. And she is forced to, by kind of cross-examine them, figure, like, no, actually, that is a misconception. You know, a lot of these people mostly did it to themselves. You know, like we said, like the Riddler's origin story, Batman had nothing to do with that. He didn't screw this guy out of his, you know, video game deal.
Yeah.
He's not the one who threw or caused Harvey to have half his face blown off. You know, he didn't do any of this stuff. It's great. And of course the moment at the end where like, so they find Batman not guilty, but we're still going to kill him anyway, because who gives a shit?
Because of course we are.
We're the villains. We're going to kill him.
Yeah.
Very, very funny. And then the Joker comes in dressed as a priest and gives him his last rites. And I forget, how does he get out of it? Robin helps rescue him, or Commissioner Gordon comes in and saves him or something.
Yeah, I think. Honestly, I don't even remember the ending, because like it's the trial part of that's the most.
It's the district attorney. She gives Batman something that helps him get out of his manacles or whatever he's got changed. And so he clobbers all of the villains, and then the cops come in and clean up and kind of take them away. Yeah, it's just a really fun episode because, again, you're getting almost all of the villains in one spot. which you rarely get. There's another one kind of like this where Hugo Strange has figured out that Bruce Wayne is Batman, and he's going to try and reveal that to the other villains. Like it's the highest bidder or something. They're all there trying to find out. And anytime you get all of the villains into one place at one time, there's just this real fun sense of like, oh, it's Halloween in Gotham today. It's great.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And they didn't kill him in that episode, but this episode we're talking about next, it might be my favorite. The man who killed Batman focuses on a character that I don't think exists outside of this episode, Sid the Squid. He's this low-level nobody who dreams of being a big shot, dreams of being the mafia boss or whatever. But he's a short little guy. He's got nothing to offer. But he accidentally seems to kill Batman. He doesn't, of course, but everyone believes he does, including him. And so it winds up getting him in trouble with the Joker. It winds up getting, people trying to fight him. I should be the guy who beat up the guy who off the bat or whatever.
Right.
And
everybody, I was gonna say everybody wants to take a shot at him because it's like, well, if you kill Batman, if I take you out, then I'm tougher than you, right? It attracts all.
It's
of this
the Wild West,
attention.
right? If you're the fastest gun and I can outdraw you, I'm the fastest. That kind of stuff. He's played by Matt Frewer, famous for Max Headroom, and Batman lets people think that he got killed so that he can follow this guy to the real bad guy, Rupert Thorne, voiced by John Vernon, who I just think kills this role. I love John Vernon. I'm a big Killer Clowns fan. And then, then he winds up, the guy has to go to jail. But Batman says, well, you might be okay in jail because they still think in prison that he's the guy who off the bat. So he he has to go to jail, but he's an important person.
He's finally a big shot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love the sequence in this where I love that the Joker shows up and he's not the main villain. They'll do that every once in a while, where there's kind of like a detour through one of the marquee villains, but the episode's really about something else. And here, again, the Joker, just like all of these other guys, is jealous and he's frustrated that he didn't get to be the one to kill Batman. And so they have this fake funeral for Batman because he's carrying around, Sid the Squid is carrying around the cape and cowl because he managed to grab that somehow in the fray before Batman seemingly got exploded. And so they have that. They're kind of putting it in this pine box. They're going to cremate it. But the stuff the Joker says, I think, isn't Harley Quinn does an Amazing Grace on kazoo.
Dear friends, today is the day the clown cried. And he cries not for the passing of one man, but for the death of a dream. The dream that he would someday taste the ultimate victory over his hated enemy. For it was the Batman who made me the happy soul I am today. How I agonized over the perfect way to thank him for that. Perhaps with a cyanide pie in the face. Or an exploding whoopee cushion playfully planted in the Batmobile. But those dreams were dashed by the Weasley little gunsel sitting there in our midst. The cowardly, insignificant Garnet who probably got lucky when Batman slipped on the slime trail this loser left behind him. This mound of diseased hyena filth who's not fit to lick the dirt from my spats! But I digress. The time for sorrow has passed. It's time to look ahead to a future filled with smiles. And I'll be smiling again.
Yeah, and that was really Arlene Sorkin on the kazoo. They did one take, and they said that if they had to do another one, they wouldn't have because they were all laughing so much in the booth.
It's just a great, very silly moment of oh, this is how the Joker processes the death of Batman, especially when he's not responsible.
And it's the best line. Do you remember the line that he says?
Tell me.
Without Batman, crime has no punchline.
Yes. One thing I like about the Joker reminds me a little bit of, if you've ever seen Yellow Submarine, he reminds me of the leader of the Blue Meanies in that movie, both in his visual design, there's a little of it, and a little bit in the voice too. I can't help but think of that every time I watch him. And in this episode in particular, the way he delivers the eulogy and stuff, it's that part of the Joker's voice where it goes lilting up like this. Like, that's very Blue Meanies.
Yeah, I think Mark Hamill even cited those on one of the interviews that I saw.
Oh, well, there you go. All right. And then I sussed it out correctly.
Yeah, no, you nailed it.
Yeah, it's a really great episode. And again, it's that it says a lot about this version of Gotham, right? Like what it means to be an important person here in this world.
Yeah. There's a moment, I just gotta call it. It's so small, most people would miss it, but there's a bar fight in the middle of the episode, and they focus on the bartender who's just sitting there bored with his like hand, holding up his, and he's just you hear fight. The bartender's doing nothing, and a guy gets knocked out in front of him, so he just reaches down and flicks a little cup of peanuts onto the guy's head, and you hear the guy go, ow, and the bartender has this satisfying smile. I think it's one of the funny, this series isn't known for its funny moments, but I think that's one of the funniest moments in the whole thing. Just like, little bartender, flick, ow.
I do remember noticing that. Like, he is like kind of conspicuously like kind of watching like, oh, it's another bar fight. It's Tuesday or whatever. But the way he kind of eventually says, oh, whatever, I'll get in on this bar fight. Is very well. This is very well observed, and that's the last episode we had sort of slated to talk about. There are so many good ones. There's so
many.
Yeah, we thought about doing the two-parters with Two-Face and Feet of Clay, but they're a bit longer and more involved. But they're both worth watching. The design work on, I think, Two-Face and Clayface are both really good. A lot of the best animation in this show is from the animation studio that made Akira.
Nice.
After that movie, there was a point at which they were, struggling for business a little bit, and so they took on this moonlighting work from American. They didn't do the entire show, but like any episode where the animation is particularly good, which would include that episode with Clayface. You mentioned he's an actor, right? And he changes shape, he transforms. At the end of that episode, Batman defeats him by turning on all of these different TV screens showing different performances of himself. And he starts to like uncontrollably transform into each of these different iterations of characters he's played. It's kind of like the T-1000 at the end of Terminator 2, like in the falling into the lava, like mutating into different characters. But it's extremely well animated. All of these transformations, way better than you would expect for a TV budget cartoon.
Animation was amazing, and I know we're running out of time. We don't want to talk about all of it, but like this was so good. It birthed so many things. Superman, the animated series, the new Batman Adventures, Batman Beyond, which honestly is worthy of an episode in of itself. I think Justice League might also be. Mask of the Phantasm, which is one of the best Batman movies. Like so many things. And, not just stuff directly, but I mean, I think anyone who's touched Batman in any way, or even other superhero stuff, they would be lying if they said that this series didn't inspire them in some way.
Yeah, every superhero thing came after this owes a debt to this in some way. I mean, even the two Schumacher Batman movies, which are not good, but they used concepts from this series as inspiration, right? Their version of Bane or Mr. Freeze and Poison Ivy in Batman and Robin, while awful, are, their attempts to do versions of these versions of the characters as opposed to the earlier iterations of those. Every superhero thing, though, not just DC, but Marvel, this was like this thesis on like, here's how you do this. Here's how you tell stories, but no one's ever come close. Again, the especially with the level of like maturity and just kind of sadness that's baked into this show. That's what sets it apart, right? Like we talked about with example for like the baby doll thing, where it just ends with this incredible moment of this person just being broken as a human being, and Batman quote unquote saves her just by sort of being there to like tell her, like, okay, you got to go to Arkham, but it's not going to hurt so much anymore. Maybe.
Yeah.
Even the best superhero stuff, I don't think approaches something like that. They're afraid to do something that profound. Maybe The Dark Knight gets close.
Yeah. No, I people often ask, who's your favorite Batman? It's Kevin Conroy. Like, what's your favorite Batman, on screen? It's the animated series. Like, I love all the other stuff like you, but I think this is the best.
It kind of does everything. Like we said, there's like a spectrum here of different takes on Batman and the characters that populate his world. And it gives you all of them. It gives you, if you want, like I said, if you want scary Joker, you get scary Joker. Sometimes you get comic Joker. You get that, Christmas one where he's singing "Jingle Bells, Batman smells, Robin laid an egg." Like, that's the same Joker who like pulled off the freeway to threaten this guy within an inch of his life, right? Same character. And they are able to so deftly do all of this without the thing losing its cohesion.
Yeah. And on a personal standpoint, and I'm sure you obviously you would agree with me on this, so many voices that I started to do impressions of as a kid were characters on the show.
And as we've talked about, we've kind of name checked a lot of the voice actors as we've gone. A lot of them are, very known for being good voice actors. A lot of them are known for just being good actors, period. Yeah. And the talent they mustered for all of this, like a lot of it would not work. It's one of those things where it's like, man, it has to fire on all cylinders. The visuals, these very striking visuals, the orchestral score that we haven't touched on much, that sort of borrows a bit from Danny Elfman, but is kind of its own. And then the writing and the performances, like all of it, every single one of them is just hitting 10 out of 10 every time.
And let's not forget, this was before computers, so they were animating this on paper.
Right, it's done the old-fashioned way.
Insane. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really special, I think. And so I would encourage everybody who has even a passing interest, if you enjoyed The Dark Knight, if you enjoyed Tim Burton's Batman, like, you owe it to yourself to watch at least the episodes we talked about today. If those don't get you in, nothing will. And then go back and watch the other stuff. But yeah, it's just so consistently good. And again, you're right. I don't know that there is a better version of Batman than this one. And rest in power, Kevin Conroy.
Amen.
All right. So, Rich, where can people find you if they want to find your good works?
Oh, thank you so much. You can follow me at Rich Baker Coaching on Instagram or Facebook, or richbakercoaching.com for improv classes, improv workshops. I have a book on improv out there people can buy. I'm kind of Mr. Improv.
You certainly are. And of course, make sure you go see him at the West Side Comedy Theater if you're here in LA. And to do some admin on our side, if you like the show, go to iTunes or wherever you found this podcast, rate it highly, tell your friends. Follow us on Twitter at NostalgiumPod, and if you want to send us feedback, that's one of the best places you can send it. You can also find Nostalgium Arcanum on Instagram as well. Those are our two social media portals right now for as long as they exist. As far as upcoming episodes go, I admit I've recorded a few of these, and they may come out of order. So, but I've got this one and one we just recorded on day 2, The Mighty Ducks. So whichever one, it's a race to get out. Whichever one I edit first, you'll hear first. And so I don't know if you're hearing this one and the other one second. But other episodes in the works include, we're going to do an episode on power ballads, which is going to be fun. And I definitely want to do one on Animaniacs. There's some good stuff coming down the pike for sure. So thanks again, Rich, for doing this. I'm really glad you were able to come on. You're always welcome anytime you want.
I always love talking with you, Doug. I love your podcast.
Thank you so much. All right. So until next time, that is one more entry in the Nostalgium Arcanum.
I am vengeance. I am the night. I am Batman.